So now let's look at the event log monitor.
Okay.
So this one we're going to dig into a little bit because there's quite a bit of configuration here.
There's a lot.
So think about any time that you need to actually go in and understand, is there anything within the event log and something that was written there, something that you need to identify that's either a problem, an issue, that's often been written to the log. So we'll give the ability to actually go and dig through that log, find that information, whether it's the existence of that once, whether it's the existence of it multiple times over time, right? We can go in and dig and find that.
Okay, so what do we got?
So the first thing we need to look at is log to monitor. So if anyone's dug through the event log, which I'm sure you all have many, many times, what type of log are we looking at? Or oftentimes we're looking at the application log, right?
Right.
Did the application write something?
Although security comes up a lot, although whatever. The fact is that any log is going to look through all of them. If you know it's only going to be in one particular log, if the machine you're looking at has a special log that your application has created, that'll be there too.
Yep, you can even define custom. If there's a specific log that you've written to or that your application was working with or something that you've got set up, right, you can go dig into that custom log.
Yep.
All right, so we'll set this to application. So the next thing is match definition. So we can look at any time the error pops up in the log, and that's a match. Okay. Or we can get a lot more specific. We can set that to custom. And then we can actually come in and define the log source. So this is specifically like what wrote to the event log.
Right.
We can define aspects about the event ID, right? We can match a specific event ID. We can find all IDs within a certain criteria, or we can exclude specific IDs.
Right, so all the IDs except
right.
these,
right. So we'll set this to match only specific IDs. Define your ID number. Right, so ideally you know what was written to the log, or you've identified what is it you're looking for. You'll define that ID number.
Or multiples.
Or multiples
commas,
if you need to.
Right.
We can separate that out if we need to. And then event type. So again, this is very common to the event log, right? We need to define error warning. What is it that we're looking for? The type of event that we're looking for. We can even look for what user generated, right? We can get very specific into the user account or the system account that actually generated and define that. Then we can also get down into like the actual event information, right? So you're looking for for example, certain keywords within there. You don't want to necessarily define the full thing. You don't know exactly what the full text is, but you know certain aspects about that event. So you can actually go in and define those specific keywords.
With wildcards or?
Correct.
Right. So you can just do a part of a phrase or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. And if there's events that are somewhat similar, not only can you include certain events, but you can exclude certain events when we're digging through this.
When it says this, but not when it says that.
Right. And the next thing is number of past polling intervals to search for. So how far back do we want to look into this? I've actually had someone on Thwack recently ask about, how can they search for a certain event that happened multiple times within a time frame, right? With 24 hours. So if you know your polling interval,
which is typically 5 minutes. That's
right.
the default.
Then you can multiply that out by the total amount of time that you want to look back within the event log.
Right. It also helps to reduce the number of duplications. Because if you're saying I'm looking for this event within the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is, then you know that if it hasn't happened for that amount of time, then it's going to clear. So it's a way of thinking about how do I not get one alert every 5 minutes because it still happened, it happened again.
Right.
That's the other reason for that particular value.
So in the example that I mentioned before, they wanted to find it within a certain time frame, right? And they wanted to find did it happen so many times within that time frame? So I can actually go in and define, if match found, in this case, based on event count. So the amount of times that event actually happened within the interval that we defined. If this happened 10 times within the last, say, 24 hours, whatever we defined, we can actually define that as a warning. Or define that as critical, whatever the case may be.
Right, and again, as we saw earlier, if we see 10 times, it doesn't have to be 10 consecutive times. It can be 10 times within a 24-hour period, which is a lot more than 10 polling cycles.
Yep, and in this case, I may want to know that it happened 5 times within the past X number of polling cycles, and that just gives me a heads up, right? That's a warning. But then once it reaches my actual threshold of 10, I know that there's a significant problem with this application that I need to address.
Right.